What is going on, Notre Dame football fans? I'm Tyler Horka. That's Jack Sobel here with another edition of Hey Horka live on YouTube. If you guys are watching live on YouTube, we appreciate it. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment. We see all the comments popping through, as Mark with glasses already knows. He says T-minus 17 days, Jack, and that's what it is as we record this Wednesday night, August 14th. 17 days until August 31st. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. How are you feeling, man? We're getting closer.
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. Now that we kind of have it planned out a little bit more, I'm very excited for this Texas A&M trip. I think we got a pretty good evening planned out, honestly. I might see a couple of college friends there. They're from Houston. They're going away for the weekend, but might see them Friday before you guys get in. So obviously great game to cover. So I am really, really excited.
Yeah, what's cool about this one for Notre Dame fans is it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, the Irish went down to Texas and played in Austin. That was 7-8 years ago at this point already, but only the second ever trip to College Station. So a little teaser for the end of our show. We're going to be ranking college towns that we've been to. I think College Station definitely fits in as a college town because you have Texas A&M University there and not a whole lot else. So like where I went to school, I don't really signify that a college town. Austin, Texas is very much not a college town, but you went to one. So I'm curious to see if that's going to make your ranking again. We will talk about that later. First though, again, we kind of like to talk about some happening news at the beginning of this show. And Jack, what did you make of the Here Come the Irish trailer that Notre Dame dropped on its main social media feed today? It's basically a Hard Knocks style docuseries that we're going to be privy to. And Irish fans, I know you guys are really excited about that on Peacock. So dust off that Peacock subscription. But Jack, as we get Jack back in here.
Sorry,
Jack, I was just asking you about the
StreamYard kicked me out. My Wi-Fi is fine. StreamYard just kicked me out. My internet was off, and then I rejoined. I have no idea.
Sometimes it's StreamYard that we have to worry about, and not the Wi-Fi. But yeah, I was just asking. You're probably invested in Hard Knocks because you're a Bears fan. That's probably been pretty cool. How cool is it for these Irish fans that we're going to get to see? I'll put up this here little trailer, for this Here Come the Irish docuseries. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I'm interested to see how much they show, because in my experience, when the team produces the show, it's often not quite as interesting as when HBO produces the show, because the team only shows the things that they want people to see. And obviously Hard Knocks is favorable for the team that it's doing it for. Otherwise they wouldn't be granted access. But I find that the team produced shows are often less interesting, but this could be the exception. And it is certainly a good amount of access. We've seen the documentary cameras around. And any Notre Dame content is good for I know the people watching the show.
And so here's kind of what I think everyone jumps to. Of course, the trailer was awesome. You just saw it if you're watching on YouTube, and you've definitely heard it if you're a Notre Dame fan already. But the release dates, so we're going to get episodes 1 and 2 on August 29th, which is 2 days before the season opener. What an appetizer that is. That's going to be tremendous. Then we don't get to see 3 and 4 until December 5th. 5 and 6 come out December 19th. Episode 7, the season finale, if you will, is January 16th. People are saying, what the heck? Why the crazy layoff? One, they're in the middle of a football season and they're trying to focus on that. 2, I talked about an appetizer. Those could be appetizers for some pretty big dates if you're a Notre Dame fan. 3 and 4 would come out a few days before the college football playoff field is revealed. 5 and 6 would come out a day before the first playoff game on the 20th. And then 7 comes out 4 days before the national championship on December 20th. So if you're a Notre Dame fan saying, what the heck, why don't we get to see this? Well, 1, just watch the football games. That's what September through December is for anyway. 2, if Notre Dame makes it to the very end of the college football season, Jack, this is going to be a pretty fun ride. That's the difference between this and Hard Knocks, I think, is you get this all the way up until the end. Hard Knocks is, training camp, and now go watch the season.
Correct. And I'm also curious, like, what do they show if Notre Dame season goes poorly? I don't think it will, but I mean, that is a possibility. I also don't know, like, are they going to show the entire regular season in like 1 or 2 episodes in early December? There are a lot of questions I have that like really can't answer until we see the actual show. I just hope that I'm not in it. I don't want me asking a question to be shown there. Because like in Hard Knocks, they show reporters asking questions, like you hear the voices. And I don't want mine to be in it.
Hey, do your job well, man, and there'll be nothing to be embarrassed about or anything like that. So
very true.
Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of the news of the day. I thought it was very cool, but we're gonna go ahead and get to what we wanted to talk about. Again, this show, we've got 5 questions that were asked on the Loose Emoji blueandgold.com message board. Really, there were probably 10, 15, 20 questions that I got today in my Hey Horka thread, but we picked out 5. Again, a fun one at the end, but the first 4 are going to be pretty hard hitting. And this is where we start from B Smitty 8. Are the Fighting Irish overrated, or is Notre Dame actually a top 10 preseason team? Again, for context, Notre Dame is number 7 in both the Associated Press poll, which came out on Monday, and the coaches poll, which came out a couple Mondays ago. Jack, we'll start with you. I mean, it's a pretty basic question, but there's so many different routes you can take on this. Do you like where the Irish are ranked at number 7?
Yeah, I think they're ranked to the right spot. I probably would have had them at number 7. I mean, I haven't really put much thought into where to rank everyone. I personally think there is a clear top 4, and Notre Dame is not in that. I think you could probably rank 5 through 10 in just about any order and not be wrong. So I would have had Notre Dame anywhere between 5 and 10. I think 7's a good spot for them. And you know, I did see your answer on the board. So I kind of wanted you to get into that before I offer my response to it. But personally, I think Notre Dame is one of the 10 most talented teams in the country, and I think this is a good spot for them.
So I put up the top 25, and I'll put you on the spot one more time before I get to what I'm going to talk about. Is that your top 4? Is that your clear top 4, the way that they have it, or?
Yeah, I think that's probably the top 4 in that order. I would say maybe you can swap Oregon and Texas. It's nitpicking. I think Georgia number 1, Ohio State number 2 is pretty clear. At this point,
if Texas keeps losing running backs, man, you'll swap them in Alabama and them in Ole Miss and maybe even them in Notre Dame.
It's
running. That's true. I'm talking to the wrong guy about that.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably have like 5 through 7 in any order. Maybe you give Michigan more credit for winning the Natty last year, and you have them ahead of Notre Dame. Maybe you think Penn State's going to make a jump this year. Who knows? Maybe you like the transfers Florida State brought in. So like you could order 5 through 10 a lot of ways. That's probably around the way I'd have it. And then I'm biased here, but I think Missouri's in a good spot at 11. Nothing really standing out here to me as egregious. I don't know if you disagree here, but maybe Clemson at 14 is pretty high. That's probably the one thing I'd say, because I don't know what they did to get better on offense. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good list. And I like any year, you can probably order the preseason 20 to 35 in any order.
Yeah. So as I look at this, it kind of makes the argument that I'm about to make a little weakened, or I don't know where I'm going to go with it, because I'm looking at these teams and I'm thinking, well, with everything that Michigan lost, Notre Dame probably beats the Wolverines. So I like Notre Dame being ahead, just based on what we know about this Notre Dame team and everything that Michigan lost. And Penn State's probably perennially overrated. If Notre Dame is the team that everyone's looking at in this and saying, why are they in the top 10? You should probably look at Penn State first, or even Ole Miss, who, I get it, they're uber talented, and Lane Kiffin is building something special there with the way that the Rebels are recruiting. But like, if Notre Dame played Ole Miss on a neutral site field, I probably like Notre Dame's chances. But here's the thing: if I were a Fighting Irish fan and Notre Dame came in at number 11 or 12 in this poll, Jack, I would kind of like mildly be happy and pleasantly just kind of take a sigh of relief, because I got some numbers here. Notre Dame, and this is just the Marcus Freeman era, so the last 2 years, Notre Dame started the 2022 season ranked number 5, finished the AP poll ranked 18, 2023 started 13. So there's that 11, 12, 13 that I was talking about. Like, okay, we're not going to be too high on these guys. Let's just rank them here and see what happens. And they finished 14. So that's a case of they were who we thought they were. And if you look at the college football playoff rankings, it's even worse than that. Notre Dame finished 21 in 2022 and 16 in 2023. So it's not really a plea. It's more of, let's stop doing this to ourselves. I would have been completely happy if I'm a Notre Dame fan and the Irish were 11 or 12 and the pollsters are saying, go earn this. We're not going to give this to you. I get it. You got Mike Denbrock. You have Riley Leonard. You have probably another top 5 defense led by the same guy who's been leading it in the last 3 seasons in Al Golden. I mean, we could have started this show off instead of the docuseries with the All-American list that came out today, Jack, and Benjamin Morrison, Howard Cross, Xavier Watts were pretty much on all of those.
Nothing shocking there with the All-American
exactly. List. So I think that's why we're seeing Notre Dame at number 7 on these. But man, here's what I say, Jack, and I know you feel differently about this as well. I picked Notre Dame to go 10-2 and be the 11th seed in the college football playoff. So based on this ranking, I think Notre Dame's too high. I think Notre Dame is an 8-11 type of team, not a 5-7.
Well, you have to consider that, like, if Notre Dame is the 11th seed, they're probably the 9th best team in college football.
That's fair.
So otherwise, like, I get it, and I get the argument you made on the board, which was like, Marcus Freeman under Notre Dame like hasn't earned that ranking. Like, I get it. It's just that, like, that's not what this is ranking. It's ranking the most talented teams in college football. I mean, Ole Miss finished as like the 10th best team last year. I think they're more than worthy of being in that top 6. I would consider putting them over Alabama at 5. Honestly, I think they're just a really, really talented team on both sides of the ball. I don't think I don't think Missouri hasn't done anything besides what they did last year. In the last 10 years, they're more than worthy of being number 11. It's not like this isn't like a spot to be earned is the argument I'm trying to make. This is like what we think are the best teams heading into this year. And honestly, I don't really have an issue with it. Like Mark with Glasses said, this is the case Heather Dinish, I sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, made on ESPN. Like, Notre Dame has 11 projected draft picks. I could probably make the case for 12 or 13 who could eventually get taken, and more if you count the underclassmen. Like, it's a really good, really old roster. I think is a lot of what we're missing. I don't really know how it compares to the age of everyone else, but like, Howard Cross is in his 5th year. Benjamin Morrison has played a ton of football. Xavier Cross is in his 6th year. Xavier Watts is in his 5th year. RJ Oben's 6th year. Chris Mitchell, 6th year. It's just a lot of veteran talent that just continues coming back to Notre Dame or coming to Notre Dame. And, I think they're one of the 7 best teams in college football right now. And like, they could very well lose in week 1 at A&M, drop down to like 15 or something, and then just win the rest of their games and be right back at like number 9 by the time they play Florida State. Like, that's the way these rankings work. It's a lot of overreacting to small sample size after week 1. I would be interested to see like if any of like the sports analytics people want to hop on this, like a model of like what is more predictive of the end of season poll, the preseason poll or the week 1 poll. I would be curious to see that.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point of like, what if Notre Dame loses against Texas A&M?
Yeah.
That's why if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I like the fact that the Irish are number 7, because that might only drop the Irish down to like 12, 13, 15 at the worst. If A&M, as this poll is saying, is the 20th best team, they probably jump into the top 15. Notre Dame drops to the bottom of the top 15. But if Notre Dame were to start at 11, 12, 13, then you're talking about Notre Dame dropping to number 20 and having to, like you said, earn back some of this overreaction, the sky is falling demise that would be put upon Notre Dame if they were to lose that game. So Does this poll matter? Not really. Does it matter at least a little bit for perception? Absolutely, because what we're looking at here, Jack, is 25 logos. And if your logo is not there, you're perceived to be not as great of a team, or, whatever it is. So the higher that you're standing on that list, probably the better. So I kind of retract what I was saying about if I were a Notre Dame fan, I would want them to be number 11. There's probably some people out there that think that way, but I also just think that when it's all said and done, I think Notre Dame's going to lose a couple of games, Jack, and I don't think that they're going to be the number 7 team in the country at the end of the year. That's just the way that I feel right now. Now, talk to me at midnight, September 1st, and I may think differently. That's what's crazy, man. There's a lot on that game in terms of how we're going to view the rest of this Notre Dame season. It's a pretty crazy season opener.
Well, and I think I'll agree to disagree with you on the final record. You can check out our predictions on somewhere on blueandgold.com. But I think you made the good point that it doesn't matter. It's a good conversation topic. There's a reason that the college football playoff doesn't put out its first ranking until late October, early November, and it's because it's not married to the precedent of past polls before it puts out its first ranking. So you don't need to worry about the rankings until the ranking that matters does it, because we've seen the AP poll is going to be more married to what it was before. Last year, the first college football playoff poll, Ohio State's number 1 because they have a quality win. Whereas in the AP poll, I think at the same time, probably still had Georgia number 1 because that's what it was at the beginning of the season. So I wouldn't worry about it. If Notre Dame drops down 15, even I don't think they're going to be as low as 20, but who knows? Depending on how the A&M game goes, we're going to reinforce the point that Notre Dame could lose that game and still be very much alive in the playoff chase. And this is a team that's going to be better at the end of the season than it is at the beginning. And all it needs to do is be a 0-1 loss team heading to Florida State to really have a shot.
And we can end this segment going back to kind of the crux of B. Smitty 8's question. Whatever number is beside your name in this matters less than, do you believe you're a top 10 team? Because if you're a top 10 team, you're going to get into the college football playoff. And as much as I'm wishy-washy on this, Jack, Notre Dame right now, what we know about it, probably a top 10 team. And
they certainly believe they are. There's a lot of confidence in that building right now.
Yeah. So overrated? No, because we don't know who's underrated. We don't know who else is overrated. We don't know. But with what we do know, if you're going to slap a 7 next to Notre Dame's name, I'm probably fine with it. But I will say this, Jack. Last thing. If Notre Dame really is the 7th best team in the country, it better go down to College Station, Texas, and beat A&M as a favorite on the road in the season opener, right?
I don't want to be that absolute about it. I think that, as I've said in the past, and as I just said a couple minutes ago, this team is going to look better at the end of the season than it is at the beginning, just because there are so many new parts on offense. And I mean, elsewhere in the ranking, A&M is the 20th best team in the nation, and the committee, last year with Alabama, has shown that they're willing to forgive an early season loss to a good team. And while A&M is not Texas, it's still an early season road loss to a good team. And I think if Notre Dame shows after that game that hey, they've gotten better, their offense is what we thought it would be, I think that would be enough to get them the seed they'd want, regardless if they win this game or not. So that's why I've always said Notre Dame has more to gain in this game than it has to lose.
I mean, that's an optimistic way of looking at it. I'm going to stand by my reasoning that if you're a top 7 team, you better go win this game.
Oh, very fair.
And what you said, if you do lose, A&M better end up being a good team. I don't think there's any Notre Dame fan wishing out there for A&M to have some dismal 5-7 season. Win or lose that game, if A&M is a winning football team in 2024, it helps the Irish.
Correct. And the comments here say A&M predicted to finish 9th in the SEC. The 9th best team in the SEC is the top 20 team in the country. That's the fact of the matter right now.
We've seen that.
It's a really, really good league. They're going to be really good SEC teams that finish 7-5. Like
Is this true, Jack?
the
Notre
line,
Dame's
like
giving the point. Hasn't Notre Dame always been favored in this game, or have I not been watching the lines?
I think when it opened, I think Notre Dame was the underdog.
Really? Okay.
I can look this up.
Yeah, we got Jack on this right now. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I have not looked at betting lines for a game that, and to this point, it's still 2.5 weeks away, and for the longest
Yeah,
time was
according to FanDuel, FanDuel Sportsbook, A&M is a 2.5-point favorite.
wow. Okay, I think that helps Notre Dame. Honestly, like there's this whole thing of I don't think Notre Dame is an underdog in that game. That's Kyle Field playing a part in that 100%. That's a home team line right there. Because what is it? Usually a field goal makes up the difference. So that's like a pick 'em on a neutral
Yeah.
field. Notre Dame would be favored by 2.5, 3 points at home. I do think that favors the Irish because this whole time in my brain, looking at this poll and knowing what I know about Notre Dame versus A&M, I've just been thinking that Notre Dame's been a field goal favorite. So, okay. News to me. We're getting closer to this game.
Early week ones are weird. It like the
Yes.
the better team does not always win. And I think that,
Yeah.
that's one of the great things about a 12-team playoff is like you can have that blip and still, get better by the end of the season and it doesn't hurt you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into more Notre Dame because that game still is 17 days away. I know it's rapidly approaching, but we need to talk about Notre Dame now and in the future, Jack. And I thought this was a really good question by our friend, JRP3. You know who you are. So name a player from each side of the ball who will redshirt in 2024, but will play a considerable role in 2025. I thought that was a very interesting question. I'll give you the floor if you want it.
Yeah, so on offense, I threw around a couple names. I was really thinking about the wide receiver position. I don't think Micah Gilbert's probably not going to play a ton, but I don't think he's going to redshirt based on the comments about
Yeah.
him going back to spring, what we've seen from him in fall camp. I think he's a guy where if someone goes down, he gets into that rotation. And, the season this long, it's unlikely that everyone at every position stays healthy. So I think he plays. I do think Logan Saldate redshirts, and I do think Logan Saldate plays a big role next year. Just looks like a really smooth route runner right now. Good hands, obviously fast. Notre Dame has shown in the fall under Denbrock that it's no such thing as too many slot receivers. And I'm just a fan of this young receiver core. I could say KK Smith is not a freshman, but for all intents and purposes, he is. Like KK Smith enrolled in the summer last year, and he was injured all of the fall. And so, this is essentially his freshman year. So, and we've heard good things about him. Mike Denbrock said he can be a real deep threat. He just needs the reps, needs to practice. At receiver, they could take a grad transfer next year, just as hey, we would feel comfortable with more returning production. I get that. They're not going to need a whole revamp like they did this year. I don't think. I think they're going to rely more on the Saldates and the Gilberts and the Cam Williams if he takes a step, and the KK Smiths. And I think Saldate is a guy who's going to redshirt and play a big role next year. We can have you do your offense, and then I'll do defense.
Yeah. This is not the guy that I was going to say, but I told you to come equipped with some honorable mentions. So I'm going to say 2 offensive guys right now, and then we'll go 1 each on defense, and then we'll start throwing out some names after that. I want to stick with the theme that you were giving. That's why I'm going this direction. I think Cam Williams is a guy that – is he ready now? No, we've seen it. He's behind – he might even be behind Saldate right now in terms of progression of what we've seen and what these players can do in the 25 minutes that we get to watch practice, Jack. I see Saldate, he's moving a little different. He's out there. He's doing things that Cam Williams has not gotten himself to be able to do yet. But I think that Cam Williams is a guy that once the light kind of goes off in his head and he figures it out and he realizes, oh, I can do some of the same things in college that I did at high school. It's harder, but I'm still that same player. Jack, we were so excited about this kid when Notre Dame got him to commit, when Notre Dame got him signed, he got on campus. Everyone was Cam Williams this, Cam Williams that. And it's not that way right now because of what Micah Gilbert did in the spring. And Jordan Faison is back in the mix and looks good in practice. You mentioned the transfers. those guys are real. They're here. They're players. That's who Notre Dame's going to lean on in 2024. But like you said, Jack, if they don't do the whole revamp and they don't get 3 guys from the portal, I think Cam Williams is all of a sudden like, hey, we gave you your year. Now go do your thing. I think Cam Williams could actually be one of Notre Dame's top receivers in 2025.
Yeah, he could, certainly. I think like we have a question from Marcus with glasses. What's Cam Williams' deal? He's just not great at changing direction right now. He doesn't really know what he's doing as a route runner yet. Whereas like Saldate, I think he could play now if they needed him to. I just don't think they need him to right now. Or like maybe
Saldate is like the KK Smith thing, Jack, where KK Smith misses an entire fall of football because of a bum shoulder, and he comes back in Sun Bowl practices, and you're like, holy cow, who's that guy? And then you see him in the spring, and you see him now, and you're like, Mike Denbrock's saying this guy's name for not just a reason, for reasons. Like, he's a good wide receiver. Like in high school, Cam Williams was a good football player. I don't know if, and of course, and by way of that, he was a good wide receiver in high school, but at this level, not a good wide receiver yet. There are some players who are the same age as him or younger than him or this, right there, just a year older than him, excuse me, who you say, okay, yeah, that guy's a good wide receiver. And I think KK Smith is that. I think Logan Saldate is going to be that. Micah Gilbert, if he could just catch the ball consistently every single time it comes to him, I think he does the change of direction stuff that you said, Jack. So that's, I didn't want to steal your thunder there, Jack, but going back to this from Mark with glasses, I think that's what you were getting at with Cam Williams, right? It's just like he's like not there yet,
Yeah.
but I do think he can be there in 2025. I do.
Everyone develops in their own path, and like, could he be the fastest guy on the team? Like Captain Crunch said. Now I have some in the pantry. I'm gonna have some after the show. Could he be like, sure, he's just not ready to play major college football yet, and that's fine.
And
a lot of freshmen aren't.
We played this game with Tobias Merriweather, right, Jack? And he felt pressured out, and he went to Cal. Like, Tobias Merriweather, fast, can run a straight line, caught a touchdown against Stanford as a freshman, caught a touchdown last year against Central Michigan, Pittsburgh. I don't know who that was, the 75-yard touchdown. It was one of those games. I don't know if we want to do the same thing with Cam Williams where Notre Dame doesn't have to. It's like Notre Dame doesn't have to put all this pressure on Cam Williams because they have all these other guys. There was pressure on Tobias Merriweather last year, and it was a little too much for what he was able to provide. That's the way I saw it.
No, absolutely. Completely agree. I think they're going to be patient with Cam Williams as long as he's patient with them. And everything I've seen and heard from him says he will be.
Defensive guys, Jack, who's going to redshirt in 2024 but play a pretty big role in 2025?
Defensive guys. I thought about going with the defensive tackles here. I don't think either of them, Mullins or Sevillano, I think they're going to want to develop physically another year before they'll probably be like back end of the rotation guys, like kind of like Anya or Donnie Heinisch was last year, if they keep developing on their path right now. But I think they're going to want to get, or maybe like Armel Mukam now, where they'll probably play a little bit, but they'll want him to develop one more year before giving him like a major role, if that makes sense. So I'm going to turn to the defensive backfield. I think a guy like Kennedy Urlacher and a guy like Carson Hobbs could be like Notre Dame's third safety in the Spear package, like the 6DB package with Urlacher, or like if he really impresses in practice and develops throughout the year, maybe they go away from the graduate transfer nickel with Hobbs. And I think from what we've seen, like Hobbs looks pretty good in practice. Jordan Clark's obviously holding down that position right now. Maybe if Clark gets hurt, Hobbs doesn't redshirt. But I think Hobbs is a good player, and I think if he's good enough, like Notre Dame, what we know about Notre Dame, they don't want to take transfers if they don't have to. They would like to develop their high school recruits and have them become starters. Carson Hobbs is ready. Plug him and play him, develop him for a few years at the nickel position, really develop an elite player there. And then Urlacher, he's had a really good fall camp. Hits hard. It feels like Don Schuler last year, where like Schuler's probably a better athlete, but Urlacher's had a good camp. He's playing well. He's pretty blocked this year. But next year, Xavier Watts is gone. Rod Hurd's gone. Schuler and Talich are the only other players in the roster I think that are ahead of Urlacher right now. So maybe he competes with Talich for a spot. Maybe he competes with Talich behind Schuler in a grad transfer, something like that. But we said before, there's a lot of sub-package spots for safeties, and I like Urlacher to carve out a role next year.
I'm glad you went that direction because I do have them on my list. I wrote down 3 players' names, and I went with the first 2, the direction that you said you were not going to go. I went with the tackles. I have Cole Mullins written down right here and Sean Sevillano written down. And it's almost out of necessity, Jack. Like, I think you're going to lose Howard Cross. You're going to lose Riley Mills. Who knows what Gabriel Rubio's situation is? Like, it's just been one thing after another with him. And you hope that next year, he doesn't have to leave the team and then he stays healthy, because I think he's a guy that comes in and could maybe start because of those 2 guys that are leaving. I think Jason Anye is definitely a starter if he stays, but I've seen 2 deep guys go to the NFL just because they know that they can, and he's an athletic freak, Jack, and like if he says, you know what, I've done enough, I have my Notre Dame degree, he's a senior, I don't want to do the whole graduate student route thing, I think Jason Anye could leave. All of a sudden, that's 3 of your top tackles who have left. And you probably leave behind Donovan Heinisch, who's in the 2 deep right now. You have to fill out a 2 deep somehow. To me, that's a considerable role if you're a 2 deep defensive tackle, because those guys rotate, man. I remember Gabriel Rubio, tail end of his freshman year, he was rotating in. Donovan Heinisch, I just mentioned him. He got into the rotation, I think, quicker than anyone thought he would. I know his brother has this legacy, stayed forever, eye black, just he was Notre Dame football player through and through. And Riley Mills just said the other day, like, he's a Heinisch. We know what to expect from him. So yeah. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but somehow guys just trickle into those defensive tackle roles, Jack, and all of a sudden they're playing a considerable role. And I think Cole Mullins is a guy that's going to be healthy and going to be a good player. Sean Sevillano, losing some weight, going to be a good player. So I did go with the defensive tackles. I think both of those guys are going to probably, they have to redshirt this year, right? You're on the same page with me with that, at least, right?
Yeah, one would think, unless like if multiple injuries hit defensive tackle, maybe you could see limited reps for probably Sevillano more likely than Mullins. I know Al Golden said Mullins is up there, but Mullins is still 260 pounds listed as at least. Which is, I mean, it's another reason why, like, and you mentioned, so I think they will both redshirt. But you mentioned all these guys like the Heinisches and Anyes and whatever you get out of Gabe Rubio at this point. Armel Mukum, I mean, we've heard so many good things, about him. In fall camp this year, now that he's healthy, like, I think in an ideal scenario, all but maybe 1 or 2 of those guys come back. I don't think Anye would still be here if he didn't plan on staying and starting next year, one would think. Same thing for Donovan Heinisch. Like, obviously there's a legacy connection there, but all these guys, like Mukum's younger, but like Heinisch, Anye, even Rubio, at this point, they're probably not still here if they don't think there's a path for them to start at some point. Maybe Notre Dame brings in a grad transfer to compete with them, but I mean, if a guy or 2 leaves, but at the same time, it's like Mullins and Sevillano, it's still blocked behind another guy. So I think Mullins and Sevillano play next year. We obviously know they like them both, especially Mullins. I think they like how he's going to develop once he really gets to that defensive tackle size. But I think junior year is probably when we're going to see the big contribution from them.
And that's a normal timeline for a defensive tackle.
Yeah, for a DT, it's a very typical development path. Absolutely.
For sure. So I want to wrap up this conversation with circling back to Kennedy Urlacher. Love that pick. I think he's on, if you're talking about progression timelines, development timelines, he's on the Adon Schuler thing where Notre Dame doesn't need him now, but they know he's going to be a good player, groom him, take care of him, make sure he's happy, because all of a sudden he can be in a position where he's pushing for a starting position next year. And I know Don Schuler's still going to be here as a junior, but too deep in 2025 as a sophomore is not out of the realm of possibilities for Urlacher, just as it is for Schuler, who's pretty much penned in there right now.
I mean,
and we're gonna
sorry, 1 sec. For all the flack like Chris O'Leary took late in his tenure with safety recruiting, I mean, Schuler, Urlacher, and Talich, that's a pretty good 3 young safeties to have in the toolbox right now.
Totally agree. And the first guy that I wrote down, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you saw the thumbnail, Jack. I think CJ Carr is going to redshirt this year, and I mean, we're a year away from having to do this, but I'm putting more and more eggs in that basket where who knows how it shakes out? Who knows? Who knows who the best quarterback between Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, and CJ Carr is right now? But just the way that this is trending, I could see Notre Dame finally saying, all right, we're starting a sophomore. We're giving, especially if a certain guy decommits and goes to a certain SEC school. Okay. I'm not going to say his name on here. I leave that for my colleagues. You hear that name on plenty of shows on this YouTube channel all week for the last month. If that guy doesn't end up at Notre Dame, Jack, and CJ Carr is at least as good as Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchey, and you think that one of those guys is going to leave, I know everyone thinks that is just the way that formula comes out. There's no way all 3 of those guys are on the roster in 2025. Just everything about it screams CJ Carr is Notre Dame starting quarterback in 2025 to me, Jack.
Yeah, I don't think I said CJ Carr because I feel like he's the completely obvious answer here.
Okay.
Unless multiple injuries hit quarterback, probably going to redshirt. I do think he passes Kenny Minchey at some point as QB3 this year. I don't think he passes Angeli as QB2. But if I were a betting man, I would say that Carr is the starter in 2025, based on what we have seen in practice, based on what the players say and coaches say about CJ Carr.
Yeah.
I mean, best case scenario, he's Notre Dame's starting quarterback for 2 to 4 years. And I think after so many grad transfers, that's a really appealing scenario for Notre Dame, regardless of whether you get Deuce Knight or not. He's a really, really bright kid. What has always impressed me most about him is just how drawn to him his recruiting classes. They revere him to the extent that we do not often see with freshman quarterbacks, I think. And you've been around longer than I have. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's just got that it factor about him, I think.
What I think the coolest part about him is he has that aura, and finally that player isn't a highly ranked linebacker like Drake Bowen or Jalen Sneed or a safety like Kyle Hamilton. And I get it. Kyle Hamilton's one of the best players in the NFL right now. And you kind of knew that was coming from him from the moment that he committed to play at Notre Dame. But finally, Jack, you're getting everything that you just said and maybe more from a quarterback. And it just feels like that's been a long time coming for Notre Dame. And I get it. Ian Book started for as long as he did. He won more games in a Notre Dame uniform than anyone else. But this feels different because it's CJ Carr. It's the Michigan legacy grandson of Lloyd Carr. It's the quarterback that everyone wanted, but Notre Dame got. And I do think the best case scenario for Notre Dame is he starts for, like you said, 2 to 4 years, maybe even just 2, because he has 2 good enough years to where he says, I'm finally the Notre Dame quarterback that's leaving after 3 years and going to go be a first or second round pick. You don't get that with the Fighting Irish all the time. And you're kind of speaking it into existence, but on the other hand, you kind of feel that it's possible and real and tangible. So it's exciting, and I think it's happening. I think we're on we're in the very infant stages of this happening.
Yeah, completely agree. Before we move on, you want to do you have any other names that you think will redshirt? I can't think of anyone else that will redshirt, but also will make an impact next year, or at least that we can tell right now.
Yeah, those are the 5 that I wrote down, and it was in this order for me. Well, I did the 2 offense and then the defense. It was CJ Carr, Cam Williams, Cole Mullins, Sean Sevillano, and I did write down Kennedy Urlacher as well. So putting Logan Saldate in there as well, I think that's a good 6. That's half a dozen guys that we think fit that criteria.
Yeah. And just trying to think of who else. Like, I don't think Bryce Young's redshirting. I don't think Kirby Lambert's redshirting.
Yeah, that's the
I
thing
think,
that I had to put into my mind was, okay, this guy's not redshirting and he's not redshirting, and that
Yeah.
kind of narrowed down the list.
like Lambert and Young are the two guys that like I don't think you need to redshirt because like they have the physical tools where like if they hit, even if they don't all the way hit, like for example, Blake Fisher was a really good football player for Notre Dame. He probably
Yeah.
didn't like all the way. Like if he stayed for another year or two, he could all the way hit that. But like, you know what I mean, right? Like,
Well, he only played 2 years of football. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like, he missed a whole year, which ended up being a
yeah,
redshirt year unintentionally, and you still lost him after 3.
yeah,
So if you went into Blake Fisher's career thinking, "Oh, we're going to redshirt this kid," you were completely mismanaging his college career.
yeah. So I think Lambert will play early in mop-up duty because they need to prepare him in case they actually need him this year, which they very well could.
Here's one from
Rezac brothers, not Anthony unless he gets the holder job.
yeah.
Teddy, if the 4 young linebackers who are in the rotation stay, probably not on defense. But I could see him carving out a special teams role. Maybe he gets a sub package spot, like as like the Aztec position or something. Like he was training there with Osbury and Schuler, but you would think Osbury and Schuler are coming back next year. So Rezac probably another year away from really making a defensive impact.
I put this out on social media if you're watching on YouTube the other day. Like, athletic kid, man. And you got one that's wearing a red jersey as a quarterback in Anthony, and the other Rezac brother is picking off passes in a drill that nobody was picking off passes in a couple days ago when we saw practice. So, like Jack said, it's a depth chart thing, and it's a talent thing at the positions that they're respectively playing. You got a ton of both talent and depth. So I don't expect them to play on those like offense, defense,
Yeah.
Jack. But like you said, there might be something there for Teddy in special teams because I just
Yeah,
showed
for
you
sure.
heck of an athlete.
Teddy and special teams for sure. We're seeing Anthony Knapp comments. I'd be very surprised if Knapp redshirts.
So I know we had offensive line talk last week, Jack. Expound upon that a little bit. Guard, tackle, like what is Anthony Knapp
Yeah, I mean,
playing? What's he doing this year?
He was working with the ones that left tackle in practice last week, wasn't he?
He was.
So we will see practice. Can we say exactly when at this point? I mean, there's only one more that we're seeing.
Well,
we're gonna see practice. We're gonna see more practice. It's going to be very soon, and
yes.
I'm interested to see if the line is what it was. If the left side of the line is what it was when we saw it. When you saw it, I was with the defense last time, which was Pendleton at guard, Knapp at tackle. I mean, if we see it again at that point, that's like that veers into projected starting territory.
I just want to say Jack has a very keen eye, and there was a highlight put out last night, I think. Was that the highlight you were looking at when you texted me today, Jack, where Riley Leonard to Chris Mitchell, and you zoomed in and you said, is that Sam Pendleton?
I just paused it. I think I saw like the middle bar that Pendleton has on his bar. Who knows? We will see. We will see at X date TBD.
I will say when we do see that, it will have been, we'll just say about almost a week since the last time we saw him. And if that is still happening, that's more than an experiment.
Correct.
Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton. So that'll be interesting to monitor for sure. This one we can go pretty quick with, Jack, but I did think it was interesting and worth talking about. Who's going to lead this team in tackles for loss in 2024? Asks Dell2210. I kind of looked into like who has been leading Notre Dame in tackles for loss. If you go back to 2020, it was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who, congratulations to him, just got quite a bit of money. Yeah. I don't know the terms of the contract, but he got paid.
He got paid on very team-friendly deal, I thought. 3 years, $39 million. I thought he would get more. It's still a very nice payday, but I thought
he's a crazy good player. And tackles for loss, that's a JOK stat, man. And like fumbles forced, fumble recoveries, all those things where you're getting to the football in good, advantageous spots for a defense. He does that. Isaiah Foskey did that for 2 seasons. He led Notre Dame in tackles for loss. And then last year was Javonte Jean-Baptiste. So it can be a linebacker. It's usually a defensive end. It has been for the last 3 years. I think the linebacker rotation, Jack, you had an excellent story at blueandgold.com this week about Max Bola saying, we're running 5 guys out there, and like it or not, we're not doing the whole thing where we just plug 2 guys in there and that's all that plays. So even when it was those 2 guys, J.D. Bertrand and Maris Liufau, last 3 seasons, it was still defensive ends kind of leading that tackles for loss charge. And I think this guy is a very good player, not just a pass rusher. I think you're going to see him bring down some running backs in the backfield. I'm going with the Duke transfer, R.J. Oben, to lead Notre Dame in tackles for loss. Who do you have, Jack?
Oben's probably my first instinct. When's the last time a defensive tackle has led in tackles for loss?
I was going to go Howard Cross. I think that's probably where you're going. I need to keep looking.
Like, how hard is it for, like, he led them in defensive stops.
I think he got close last year in tackles for loss.
Yeah. He led them in defensive stops, which is what Pro Football Focus defines as a tackle that represents a failure for the offense. Like, for example, a 2-yard gain on 1st and 10 is a defensive stop, but a 2-yard gain on 3rd and 1 is not. That is the best way of explaining that stat. And Cross led them in it. So, how close do you come in TFL?
It was 3rd. It was JJB 10.5, JD Bertrand 7.5, and then Cross had 7.
I'll go Cross. Hearing that 7 convinced me. I'll go Cross. I think he finishes more plays this year.
Yeah, I think he can get up to 10. It's just like, because a sack is a tackle for loss.
A sack does count as a tackle for loss, I believe, in the college stat book.
So if R.J. Oben leads the team with 7 or 8 sacks, I think is like a fair number that he could also exceed if he has a really good season. At that point, he only needs to bring a running back or a wide receiver on some funky play down like 3 or 4 times to get to 11 or 12. And I think that's going to lead. That's generally what I'm seeing here is if you're in the 11 to 13 range, you're leading your team in tackles for loss. And last year, Javonte Jean-Baptiste did it at 10.5. So I think that's a number like football. That's most attainable for a defensive end. But if Cross has some monster season, he could also get to a dozen as well. I'm not ruling that out.
Agreed. I do see a comment that says KVA. I'm not going to lie, that name did pop into my mind.
I think that was the first linebacker that I thought. Oh, Jalen Sneed was as
not this year, but if we're going to get really crazy and say 2025, I could certainly see KVA.
I don't even think that's crazy. I think that's.
Well, I was just saying, like, get crazy and think about 2025 at all.
I don't know why I'm looking this up, but Julian Aquara is a defensive tackle, correct?
He's an
end. Is he more of a? He's an end.
He's the end. Yeah.
Okay. I saw the big number 99, and I was just thinking tackles. So I'm still
Eagle now. The Lions cut him.
The Lions cut him. Wow. Okay.
Late, during the playoffs last year, I think.
Tavon Coney is a linebacker. It's been a while, Jack, since a defensive tackle led Notre Dame in tackles for loss. But if there's a guy that's going to do it,
it's been a while since they've had a defensive tackle like Howard Cross.
Yeah. And Riley Mills definitely helps him out in that department because you can't double team because you have to account for both of those guys. Like it's such a good interior of the defensive line, man. So I don't hate the pick. Do not hate the pick. Moving on to kind of the other side of the ball, but kind of more of like a team vibes feel question, Jack. This one was interesting to me from Ty Webb. How does a Riley Leonard-led Notre Dame team feel different in fall camp than a Sam Hartman-led Notre Dame team? So this is strictly talking about where this team is at in August, not in the middle of a regular season, because obviously there's only so much a quarterback can do to drive vibes in the midst of a season. You know, that depends on what happens every single Saturday. But right now, Jack, I would say it's a little different in the sense that Riley Leonard is – here's the thing. I at the very beginning of this video, this podcast, showed the trailer for Here Come the Irish. And I think Riley Leonard, he was smiling through his interview. That's Riley Leonard. Like, yeah. I don't know if there's anything that this guy can say without smiling. And I get it. That's not like hard-nosed football player type. Like Sam Hartman hardly ever He cracked a smile maybe on the sideline when someone threw a marshmallow into his hot chocolate. Like, that's when you got Sam Hartman to smile, but he was pretty stoic. Riley Leonard is kind of an upper. Like, he's a vibes guy in the sense that I think people actually, and not to say that they didn't actually like being around Sam Hartman. Like, Sam Hartman was a good leader, but Riley Leonard is just one of the guys, but he's your quarterback. He's alpha male, but he's also the guy that you want to go play a round of golf with. Like, it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around how down to earth he is while also clearly being QB1, if any of that makes sense.
No, it does. And we should be careful of two things. Number one, revisionist history based on how Hartman's year turned out. I think there are people that have been guilty of this, especially since Leonard got here. Because one thing that you'll notice is that when you ask players who were here this year and last year about Riley's leadership, multiple players have said, like, "Oh, Riley such and such and such." It's like Sam was last year.
That's fair. Yeah.
So the other thing is, like, when NFL scouts wrote like anonymous articles about the quarterbacks, they all said like Hartman doesn't have the arm, but they also said, great guy, loved in the locker room, and like NFL scouts do FBI level work on these kids. So the other thing we need to be mindful, we as the media need to be mindful of, is like, the way that guys are when speaking to us is not necessarily the way that guys are. And I'll give you an example. There was a player at not Notre Dame at Mizzou last year, named Tyron Hopper. He was there when I covered him too in 22 as a transfer from Florida. Great player. I don't think he said more than like 10 words in an answer to the media, stone-faced every single time. But then, like, we asked multiple offensive players. Like, we asked Brady Cook one time, who's your favorite teammate on defense? I think Darius Robinson, the D end, was like joking as like pretending to be a member of the media and asking him that question. And his answer, like serious answer, was like, "Oh, Tyron Hopper is the funniest guy I know." So I know it's not a Notre Dame anecdote, but it just goes to show you, like, we cannot fully judge a player based on how they are with us. Like, Hartman was robotic with the media. Like, he gave canned answers, obviously. Riley is much more natural with us. The vibe around the team, though, like, they're both leaders. Riley is almost certainly going to be named a captain. Hartman was named a captain. The things that the players say about them are not dissimilar. I think the hype, if anything, is greater this year because I don't think last year it was completely known how good the defense was going to be. I think we all know how good the defense is going to be. And then also the receivers are better and they have an experienced offensive coordinator.
And that's why I think I agree with Texas ND here. The Riley Leonard itself hype has not gotten anywhere near Sam Hartman levels because everyone's a little jaded on what you just said. Results are clouding people's judgments of who these people are and who these quarterbacks are. But I also think it's a product of people wanting to talk about that defense that you just mentioned, Jack, more than they want to talk about Riley Leonard, or they want to talk about Mike Denbrock. I think Mike Denbrock's been one of the most talked about figures in Notre Dame football of this entire offseason, probably even a little bit more than Riley Leonard. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but people are saying, Riley's going to be good because of Mike Denbrock, right? And he's going to be good because of these wide receivers, where last year all anyone said was, "Oh, Sam Hartman. Oh, Sam Hartman." And then when it didn't happen for Notre Dame, it didn't happen for Sam Hartman, and people kind of crashed down on him. So I saw Brian NY here saying Hartman got screwed. I mean, in the end, we didn't finish the season talking about Sam Hartman the way that we started talking about Sam Hartman at the beginning of the season because Notre Dame went 9-3 and didn't reach its goals. So, but I will say, just in terms of leadership, Notre Dame got a couple of good ones the last couple of years, Jack. And like, I will vividly remember, and I don't know if I've ever told this anecdote on here, we would go up into the second floor of the Irish Athletic Center for Tuesday interviews with players and coordinators every Tuesday evening at like 6:30 p.m. And whether Riley Leonard was talking to us or not, or I mean, Sam Hartman was talking to us or not, and most days it wasn't, if I remember correctly, we did. There was a stretch there where we got him bang, 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 but like there were a lot of weeks where we didn't. And Sam Hartman could just bolt to the locker room across the street. You can see it out the window of the Irish Athletic Center. You can see the Guglielmo Athletics Complex right there. He would stop and throw a football around with, I don't know if it was Jared Parker's kids, Marcus Freeman's kids were probably out there, coach's kids. He'd throw the football with them for 10 to 15 minutes as we're all interviewing, and I would look out the window. Sam Hartman's still throwing that football around. So if you think that he was complete robot and media darling because he trained himself to be, not the case. I think he was genuine. I think he was authentic. And like you're saying, Jack, I think Notre Dame got that again in Riley Leonard. So if you're talking locker room vibes,
yeah,
I think they both bring a lot in that department.
I do want to add something about like the locker room feel. I think that the hype around Hartman distracted both us in the media and the team from some of the red flags that you could see with the rest of the offense. Like there were red flags about the wide receiver room that I think we could have seen, but we ignored because we expected the passing game to be good because the quarterback had such a track record. I think both we and the team are more wary of that this year, and we're certainly more wary of that heading into the offseason because they went out and hammered a wide receiver in the portal.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of our focus has been like, yes, Riley's good. Like we need to see how good he is, but we also need to see like how good the receivers look. We need to see what the scheme is like, and this wasn't the case last year. We need to see how good the tackles are. Like that experience really opened our eyes to like, all right, enough with the transfer quarterback. We got to focus on the rest of the offense too, if that makes sense.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's just so much more that needs to be talked about, and so much more people are choosing to talk about. There was stuff to talk about at this time last year, but it was probably all a little more negative, and that's why people didn't want to talk about it. Whereas now, the negative stuff that you can talk about with this team, it probably offensive line, because there's so much uncertainty there, and you don't know what's going to happen after the Charles Jagazol thing. But the wide receivers are better. They're fine at running back. Mitchell Evans, if he's healthy, are fine at tight end. Riley Leonard is Riley Leonard, and we don't have to talk about him like we did Sam Hartman. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a time to bring Sam Hartman down and say that and like put Riley on this pedestal, because at the end of the day, they both came in here trying to do the same exact thing and were on the same commitment level. And like I said, I think Notre Dame's fortunate that it got these two guys when it did. But as I said earlier in the show is going to turn over to CJ Carr probably next year. I think that's happening. So we don't have to compare two transfer quarterbacks at this time next year, Jack. Isn't that so exciting? What we are going to compare right now, though, thanks to our friend again, JRP3, he asked, what are the top 5 college towns you've been to? And what is South Bend's case for being a good one? And he made sure to say, I know South Bend is not a top 5 college town that you've probably been to or that I've been to, Jack, but just make the case for why it is at least a little fun. I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to just give me all of your 5? I'll give you my 5. You want to go one by one? We're running out of time here. Maybe just
you give me your 5 first. You give me your 5 first. I got to pull up. I have a running list of the college towns I've been to, and I will.
I think I've been to like 20. I wish I had it all written down. So I've been to quite a few. And some people are probably going to see my list and be like, what the heck are you talking about? But here I go. And I didn't want to rank them in any like particular order, but I will say Auburn, Alabama is my favorite. And I'm a little bit biased because, well, one, Jack, you know this, game day atmosphere at Jordan Hare is incredible. And I think it's one of the cooler stadiums that I've been to. And 2, I have a buddy who is literally still getting his PhD down there right now. And he's been doing that for the last 3 years. And I've been able to just actually spend time in Auburn, I think it's a great place. Bar scene's cool. People are laid back. Fantastic. So I have that at number 1, but I also have in there Athens, Georgia, which maybe some Notre Dame fans made that trip a few years ago, and they maybe they agree with me. Something about these Alabama college towns, Jack. I've had a really good time in Tuscaloosa, and maybe again I'm biased there because I lived 80 minutes away in Starkville, and it was easy to get out there for not just the football games that I covered at Bryant-Denny Stadium, which is also a very fun time, but when I went and covered a baseball series, I was able to experience Tuscaloosa's nightlife. And anytime that you have your strip, your restaurants, your bars, and whatnot within eyeshot of the stadium, I think you're doing a good job. Tuscaloosa has that. Knoxville, the whole float gate thing, or like float party, I don't know what they call it, but you're on the river in boats for tailgating. That's cool. This borders on not a college town because it's a pretty big city, like sneaky big city, Knoxville. But when I was there for a football game weekend, it very much felt like call it a college town. You know what I mean? I felt like I was immersed in all things Tennessee, and that was pretty cool. Here's my oddball. I covered Texas at Cal in 2016. Berkeley is pretty cool, dude. Like, it's in the hills. The stadium is in the hills. The tailgating is like, every single frat movie that is known to man, the comedy, just raunchy, stupid, funny frat movies that you see where people are like partying on the balconies and you can see the campus and the stadium and all that. Like, that's Berkeley. And oh, by the way, you can see the bay, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge from campus. I thought that was pretty cool, just like the setup of Berkeley. So I have Auburn's, Athens, Tuscaloosa, Knoxville, and Berkeley, California.
So Auburn is also my number 1. I don't think it's all that close. I'm excluding Columbia, Missouri from this list. It's 100. I'm just out of like recusing myself because I'm biased, but Columbia is the quintessential perfect college town, and that's not just me saying it. Like, I think it's appeared on like multiple like top 5 lists.
It's one of 2 in the SEC that I've never been to, and ironically, well, actually 3, both Columbia's and Gainesville. Those are 3 that I've never been to in the SEC.
I've been to both Columbia, South Carolina, and Gainesville. Gainesville, really great stadium. It's a good college town. If it's not too hot, Gainesville's up there. I don't know if I would say it's in my top 5. I haven't been to a game in Madison, Wisconsin, but I've been to Madison, Wisconsin. It's definitely on that list.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Athens equivalent, I think, in terms of what I've heard. Just like
Athens,
fun time.
Athens is also up there. I didn't really get a chance to experience Knoxville because when we went there, we had spent the earlier part of the week on like a class trip in Memphis, and we were all kind of tired, so we just kind of stayed and watched college football. But Knoxville,
I went to an awesome Irish. I think it was Irish. It was either Irish or Scottish. And now that I cover Notre Dame, I hate that I would have to look this up. But we saw a little jig band, and this was the night before Mississippi State versus Tennessee, and the whole thing. It was awesome, and I think that's what kind of shot Knoxville up into my top 5. It was a fun time.
Yeah. So I will put Columbia in here because I've not actually been to that many college towns. I honorable mention Evanston because Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern is. It is a really fun town. It's got the lake, but alcohol was outlawed there until like the 80s, so it doesn't have any bars. So can't really put it there in that case. So
that's where your predecessor, Patrick Engel, is from Evanston, Illinois.
True. I grew up about 20 minutes north of there.
Yeah.
So Columbia and Auburn are my clear top 2 that I've been to. I think Auburn's probably, as much as I love Columbia, Auburn's probably number 1 because it is awesome in every way. Madison, Athens, and maybe Knoxville. What I'm going to see this year is Eugene. I'm very excited for that. Would you count Louisville as a college town? Probably not, right?
That's the same thing with like what Brian NY is asking here. Columbus. I mean, that's the capital of Ohio, is it not? That it doesn't scream.
It is, but I mean, there are some capitals that you could definitely say. Like Madison's the capital.
This is why I excluded Austin, Texas, because it's just not a college town, man.
Austin's a huge city, right?
Massive, massive. Yeah.
Like, could you count Louisville? I love Louisville.
That's a good point, man. I forget what that place that we ate those wings. That was awesome.
We shout out Matt Stahl with al.com for the recommendation, because that was one of the greatest restaurants I've ever been to.
Yes.
The Kentucky Bourbon Barrel beer was awesome. The bourbon was awesome. The bar we went to later that night was very fun. You know what? I'm going to stretch the definition and say Louisville. So Columbia, Auburn, Athens, Madison, Louisville.
All right. Make your case for South Bend as a college town. Mine is 2 words: linebacker lounge. Go.
Yeah. That's up there as well. Mine will be a little bit longer. Good breweries.
See, I'm curious now that, Jack, I turned 29 in less than a month. At this point, I'm old enough to wonder, do the college kids like get in on the brewery scene? Because, dude,
probably not.
Evil Check, South Bend Brew Works, I mean, Sun King right up the road from where I live. Why am I blanking on the one on the river? I don't.
It's the best one.
Crooked U, of course. I think it's the best setup. I don't know if it has the best beer. But those right there, dude, those breweries, those core breweries.
Yeah.
That's a showcase.
I would say breweries, Eddy Street Commons, linebacker, and then beautiful and historic campus. I think the campus is the best thing the college town has going for it.
So here's the thing about Eddy Street Commons that I think could take South Bend like a little over the top. Mark with glasses is joking Chipotle, and Ryan is joking Jimmy John's. If also you take those out, which, by the way, I love the fact that they're there because I've eaten at both of them. I've been to that Chipotle a ton of times after a work, whatever, women's basketball game, interview, whatever. Take those out, Jack, and if we're talking just bar scene all the way down Eddy Street Commons, if you have Brothers, you have O'Rourke's. That's basically it. If you had a Brothers equivalent and an O'Rourke's equivalent and maybe even like a cocktail bar or whatever, I think you're talking about an awesome little bar scene, because like I said, anytime that you can have a strip like that and you literally walk out the door and you look to your right or your left and you see Notre Dame Stadium, that's pretty cool. So, and I get it. It's set up for the students. They need to eat. They need to go to Five Guys every once in a while. I know Sam Hartman likes to go to Five Guys. I think we literally saw him in the Chipotle while we were eating one day, Jack. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. That was when I moved into my old apartment with my parents. Sam Hartman, very much trying not to be recognized, but he was also wearing the brand name Notre Dame gear and looked like Sam Hartman. So
you've got to eat. I get it. But Jack, I think there's an Urban Outfitters in Eddy Street Commons. Let's just make that I don't know, what's you can even make it I know Brothers is a chain bar, but like if that was a staple type watering hole, I think you're talking about one of the cooler setups there. And we have to give Justin ND Troll Sniper some love here, because Corby's is actually my favorite bar in South Bend in terms of just, hey, let's post up at this bar and drink a few light beers. That's the vibe there. And that's also the vibe at the linebacker, but 2 totally different locations. I mentioned Patrick earlier. He used to live downtown. So we would literally just walk from his place to Corby's, and it was the best. So
yeah, I mean,
Corby's.
So this is the case against this is why Notre Dame this is why South Bend is not going to be a college town. This is why South Bend is not going to be like a top tier college town, is because the downtown is good enough, but it's just too far from campus. Like you should be able to walk from campus to downtown, and while Eddy Street Commons is great, if you push downtown and moved it across the street from Eddy Street Commons, South Bend would be great, I think.
And I think that's a byproduct of even South Bend being on the bigger side of what you would call a college town. Because I lived in Starkville, Mississippi for 3 years before I got here. and you could very much walk from Davis Wade Stadium to downtown Starkville and be comfortable and say, like, yeah, that's just a nice, reasonable stroll. It couldn't. I've never done it here. I've never walked from Notre Dame's campus to downtown South Bend. I think that would be kind of crazy. I think you'd be a crazy person to do that. So I think that's just like the size and the way that it's laid out, which is unfortunate because I would love to be able to walk to Corby's or South Bend Brewworks. I know the undergrads would love to be able to walk to Finney's or CJ's, which are also downtown bars. But I think that's the knock. My knock against South Bend is you have linebacker over here and Corby's over there and Finney's over there and Danny Boy over there by the football fields. Like, at some point, let's put these things together and be able to stay in the same block. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I've been a little distracted by the Michigan fan coming into the comment section to troll.
Yeah, everyone was having a reasonable conversation about.
Yeah, appears to be a fifth grader done with his homework and decided to spend his Wednesday night in a comment section on a video for a different team.
You know what we could do is shut this video down, Jack, because it's already been
It's
over.
been like an hour. I think it's our longest one yet.
Yeah, and I have a feeling some of these might creep well over the hour mark once the season starts. But like we said at the beginning of all this, we still have 17 days before that. So let's let the folks get this Michigan fan out here, go to bed, and we will be here same time, same place, talking Notre Dame football. Hey, Horka, next week. So appreciate you guys for being with us. That's Jack Sobel. I'm Tyler Horka, and we will see you guys next time.